Life can be fast-paced, strenuous, and flat-out overwhelming. Life transitions and taboo topics can make it hard to catch your breath. Welcome to Breathe, a podcast that enables you to slow down, get your bearings, and engage in real conversations where no topic is off limits. Breathe is presented by Breath of Life, hosted by David Person and speaker-director Pastor Deblier Snell.
Welcome to Breathe. I'm David Person, along with my brothers, Pastor Deblier Snell.
Hey.
And Pastor Kirk Nugent. How are you?
Yes, indeed. We're doing good.
We're in the house. It's Monday.
That's right.
It's a great day.
That's
it's a great day.
Absolutely.
Yes, indeed, man.
Absolutely.
I've been loving this series. This has been powerful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we've been delving into the identity we have as Christians and various aspects of it. And Pastor Snell, today, we're going to get into maybe a sensitive topic, right? Because we want to talk about the decline in membership in the Seventh-day Adventist Church. And maybe even Christianity on the whole. In fact, social scientists have been saying that for the past 20 or so years, the largest growing religious demographic is of people who have no faith.
No faith.
They call them nuns.
Nuns.
N-O-N-E-S. And I think we have seen something parallel in the Seventh-day Adventist Church. Right?
Very much, especially in a particular group, native-born Seventh-day Adventists or native-born Christians in North America. So that where you see growth in our church, and I'm fairly certain it's true for most denominations, is probably overseas, or it is maybe immigrant growth. So those who migrate here from the Caribbean, from Africa, from other parts of the world, that's where you see the growth. But in terms of those who are here, that's where you see a very sharp and probably, I would say, maybe, I don't want to be hyperbolic, but it's probably an alarming decline in our ability to reach those who are from North America.
No. When you look at the numbers, it is the term is alarming. Because if you haven't looked at the numbers, you can you're like, oh well, I guess. No. It's alarming. It's alarming. And so I agree with you, man. And I think that it's an interesting dynamic. Because what does it mean? What does it? What are the implications of that particular demographic? Native-born Americans. We're not growing in that category. In fact, we are declining. In that category.
Yeah, so I guess for me, the first question immediately is, well, why do we think that is? Why do we think it's happening?
Yeah. I'm going to throw it. I'm going to throw it. I have some guesses, but I want to hear what your thoughts are.
Well, so I think, number one, I don't say number one. I think one of the reasons is, I think affluence, kind of affects.
This is what I was going to really say.
The fervor of Christianity or just spirituality in any community, and I do think that there are just creature comforts here that deceive us, or that lower our ability to recognize our need for God. And so I think that there are times where I think we kind of see certain groups as maybe naive because they're dependent on God. No, actually, I think they're walking in a greater truth. They're seeing life without the mask. And I think affluence just creates this mask that actually deceives us. And actually, Paul talks about the deceitfulness of riches. That's what it does, is it kind of poses as God, and it kind of, creates a self-sufficiency that causes us to operate autonomously from him. I do think, too, a part of that comfort, though, is one of the things it diluted was just kind of a missionary zeal in North America. I just think that, we tend to operate in a silo. We don't really have a strong community or outward focus. Like, even the language. It's like, I'm just here, just trying to build this empire. It's just kind of about, a survival building of me, as opposed to like, all right, concern and burden for my fellow man. And I think that's even showing up in the way we witness or lack of it. I got mine, you got to get yours. And then No, I was going to, because again, I don't have all the answers. No, but those are two primary culprits.
Perfect. What I was going to jump to was, if we look at other areas of the world that have gone this route before us, we will see that there are some trends that we are mimicking.
It's kind of predictable.
If you look at Europe, they've gone this way long ago. Long ago. We're just kind of following in those footsteps.
Yeah. But quick story, man. I was in England for a camp meeting, and so we're doing a workers meeting with the pastors, and I'm training and sharing, and this guy stood up and he's just like, "Yo, pastor, all that's good," but he was just like, "Man, God has left England a long time ago." That was what the preacher declared. He's like, God has left England.
He's saying he was just too secular.
Yeah, essentially. Yeah, that's what he was saying.
Yeah. Secular has really become prevalent. One of the things I found interesting when I was living and working in South Africa, in that division, there's 23 countries. There's several: Zambia, Zimbabwe, Malawi, Madagascar. Several of these countries not affluent, right? And in those countries, the message was just like wildfire.
Yeah.
But where our headquarters is in South Africa. And while South Africa might not be affluent by the West standards, but it is absolutely affluent by African standards. And the church there struggles to grow. They're not seeing the big leaps and bounds and growth that the rest of the continent is seeing, the rest of the area is seeing. So we see microcosms of this, not to the scale that North America is at currently, but we see that where money is, where the affluence is, I should say, not just money, but where affluence is, where there's not this rapid growth in the church. And I would attribute it to, that's why I was wanting to hear what the thoughts were, but I would attribute it to our tactics are very much focused on those who are poor.
Yeah.
Our strategies, what we have to bring to the table from a practical sense really appeals to someone who has no idea where their next bread's going to come from. And we haven't done the work, because I don't think that the strategies are not there. I think that they are there. Do I believe? I don't think that the affluent don't have need of Jesus. We just haven't necessarily packaged that thing in a way that really allows us
helps them to be able to identify it. Yeah.
So we've talked about affluence being a factor. I also wonder about, especially with young people, I wonder about whether or not there's just too broad a disconnect between traditional church cultural and theological values and the values that many young people, especially today, embrace when it comes to historically disenfranchised groups, whether you're talking about
you're hitting blacks
or gays or women. I wonder if that's a factor.
You know, I do think that if we're not able to modify messaging and approach, because I think Dr. Bird used to say it all the time. He's like, there's a great quote he used to say: "We're trying to win a DVD world using 8-track methods," or something along those lines. And I do think that there is a part of that. You realize, like, probably with every 5 years, there's such seismic shifts in the way we see the world, process information, like digest things. So like, you remember like maybe like 12 years ago, like probably one of the best gifts you could have given somebody was a GPS, a Garmin,
so true.
A TomTom.
So true. Yes.
Like another gift would have been like a Fitbit.
Fitbit, right,
like,
right.
I mean, this was like
Step
all
tracker.
the rage. I mean, and literally, like, you could not sell a GPS system for $1 right now. Or, I mean, because technology, everything shifts so radically and quickly. But everything else is turning over like this, where sometimes as a body and institution, we're changing like this. And most of the changes have to be forced or as a response to, you know what I'm saying, some type of trauma, tragedy,
outside,
or just
outside influence.
Right. And so I do think that we don't necessarily see, we sometimes we confuse content and container. And the belief is that, man, if I'm changing my container, man, I'm diluting the message in the content. No, that's actually not it.
No.
So, like, if you're a certain age, you know that, like, Coca-Cola has, like, a bunch of different bottles. You know what I'm saying? A bunch of, then they had the
glass.
Different glass,
Yeah,
different things.
The
and they changed the italics and, the verbiage. But it's the same little brown nasty tonic. They've been peddling her out for a long time. And so I think that because they realize people are not responding to that same bottle the way they used to, or that those italics or so on and so forth. But I think we have to be able to kind of say, all right, we need to kind of adjust some of the packaging, but the content and the beauty of the gospel is timeless. Yeah. But we got to modify it based on who we're talking to.
But I do believe, just to take it, I totally agree with what you're saying. I think we do need to modify. But when we're speaking of especially young people and younger generations that are, rapidly defining themselves as the nun, that's a new term for me. Yeah. But I think we also have a component of, are we being real? Yeah. In our faith-based spaces, are we being authentic? Right. And then, if we're not being authentic, are we at least leaving space and atmosphere for others to come in and be authentic? Because I think these are some of the pieces that really grate on some of our younger people who are like, man, but I see you at home. Right. If that's what your faith is, I don't want nothing to do with it. Right. And then, okay, I have a real issue, and I need to bring that issue up. I want to talk about this issue. I need to deal with this issue, but you don't want me to talk about my issue.
Yeah. You hit on something. So when you talk about, especially young people, one of the issues I think is the term is relevance. Like, are we relevant? And see, and this is one of the things sometimes that happens within our construct. The world, when I say the world, meaning the larger society, can be having one conversation, expressing a lament or a grief, but yet we're inside the body having a whole different conversation. So, like, let me give you, for instance, there was a time where, and I'm not saying it's a conversation that shouldn't have been had, but I don't know if you guys remember, maybe around 2020, like, you have the pandemic, everybody's at home, there's this racial tension, racial unrest.
Like a powder keg.
I mean, it was tense. So, and again, you do have, Seventh-day Adventists and Christians who are practicing and participating in the marches and in the protests, so on and so forth. But there was a time where there were these, I'm probably gonna get in trouble saying this, but like there was a couple pastors that were having these online revivals, and they had all men on the flyers.
Yes. And I remember that.
They didn't have female representation. Now, let me be clear. That is something that needs to be disrupted and addressed. But inside the church, like, while the world is hurting and grieving and lamenting the killing of brown and black people by police and the pandemic, we're having a whole different conversation. You see what I'm saying?
Interesting.
And I do think that if you were actually to hold up a mirror historically, you would probably see us having the world having one conversation, but then we're having a whole different conversation. We're about eating of flesh food in a church when the world is having this conversation. Or we're debating about, this when the world is having. So I do think a big part of that is, we have our hands on the pulse of the church instead of having our hand on the pulse of the community.
Got it.
And then so that what you're prescribing as cure is not really relevant to what they're suffering from. And it's just like this, man. If I'm itching on my shoulder, and you scratch me on my elbow, you're not helping me.
In fact, you're annoying me.
Yeah, that's exactly what's happening. So I do think that we've got to learn how to make sure our messaging and our conversations and our approaches mirror the cries of the culture, and that we don't just have our own insulated conversation.
So in the couple of minutes we have left, how do we do that?
So I think that one of the things that Jesus did, he was with the people. So he didn't have to guess
at what was going on, right?
What's going on. And so I do think that if we maintain an incarnational ministry, and we've been talking about using that term in the context of this whole conversation, we're not always ministering based on 1990. We are aware of what's happening in 2024. We're not trying to guess on what you don't have to do a survey.
No.
Because I'm a part of the neighborhood and I'm a part of the community. I do think that, but there's a part of it, and it's not just strategy. I just do think, in essence, we've got to revive our missionary zeal. Like, honestly, we are just good coming to church, watching, going home, sitting around a dinner table and discussing it and breaking it down. Like, or even there is this time, even when we have missionary activities where we're going to a prison or a jail or, I don't want to say too much, but I ain't going to even lie. we almost avoid those things. Like we can have 2,000 people at church.
Yeah.
And I'll say, yo, listen, we're going to go out to the neighborhood and we're going to feed, or we're going to do this, or we're going to do that.
20.
And you have 12 people show up.
Wow.
Like that's kind of where we are in the world. Like we just, and it's what Jesus says,
Ted.
like rich, increase with goods, have need of nothing, but you don't recognize you are X, Y, and Z. So I do think we've got to just awaken that missionary zeal, because like what Jesus declared is like, man, he's like, yo, the harvest is going to be plentiful, but the laborers are going to be few. And I don't know, man, if I had a fix for that, I'm sure I'd be a millionaire several times over. But there's got to be an awakening of our missionary zeal.
One thing I would just add on that, and he's wrapped it up really good, but one thing I would say that's very practical for anybody that's listening to this is for us to really mine the gold in our own stories.
Yeah.
To understand the things that God has brought you through and become an expert at sharing that, such that when opportunities arise, you're not sharing from book knowledge, you're sharing from your own personal story. And then begin to share that with the people who need it the most. And you'll find that at your greatest point of need and weakness, your greatest point of issues and struggles, stresses, strife, your addictions, you find those things there, and you'll know exactly who you want to share that with. Those are some of the things I found to be successful.
All right.
Yeah.
We'll have to revisit this.
We do.
I think this is a very, very
a big conversation.
Relevant.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah. Our times has got away from us today, but we'll come back to this. We'll come back to this.
Yeah. Absolutely. For pastors Devlier Snell and Kirk Nugent, I'm David Person. God bless you. Don't forget, no matter how challenging life may be, you can always stop, pray, and breathe.
Breathe is produced by David Person for Breath of Life. Executive producer is Devlier Snell, and sound engineer is Kirk Nugent. Audio episodes of Breathe can be found on Apple, Spotify, or Google podcast platforms. For video episodes and extra content, check out the Breath of Life YouTube channel. Breath of Life is faith-based content, resources, and programs from a contemporary urban perspective for those looking for hope and guidance. We believe that every breath we take is a testimony that God is consistent, that He loves us, and has a plan for our lives.